Jennifer Kay.
Am I okay? Okay. Hey, y'all. My name is Jennifer Huddleston Kelly, and I am an alcoholic. I've been kept sober since December 5th of 92, and that's my miracle. And the Frisco group in Frisco, Texas is my home group. And it's an honor and a privilege to get to be here. I'm really excited. I really am. I love enthusiastic Alcoholics Anonymous. It's my favorite kind. That's what I'm talking about. See, I like the woohoo AA. I'm always surprised, when I'm in a meeting and they ask, would you like to share? Yes. It just hardly doesn't feel like a meeting if I'm not talking. And I wish I was making that up, but I'm not. And I know that some of that is just I really enjoy the melodious tones of my own voice, but there's a deeper meaning behind that. I get real excited about talking about Alcoholics Anonymous because when a miracle happens to you, you want to share it. I don't understand people who don't want to talk about what it was like, what I was like, what happened, and what I'm like now. I'm just going to warn you, I'm a weeper. And so I don't know if y'all have them here, but we have the tissue bearers. And if you are sitting next to one, just hold her. Just hold her little hand and keep her in the chair. Because when I get to weeping, I don't know if God's coming out or God's coming in, but I do know that when the tissue bearer starts running from the back of the room, it kind of stops something. And I'm going to keep right on going. If you hand me one, I'm just going to throw it because I got stuff to talk about. But I feel really strongly about that. I really do. I think AA needs to be a place where it's safe to have all the feelings that the law will allow. And I hope God shows up soon because I'm just riffing right now. So I'm going to tell you in a general way what I was like, what happened, and what I'm like now. And I'm going to try not to just tell the story I always tell because I think it's really important to stay current. And the truth is that I have this seasonal depression. At this point in time, I do not require medication, though I don't have any problem if I did. It comes and visits. And it took me a long time to figure out that it happens regularly and that there are tools that I can use to work through it. But if there ever comes a time when those tools don't work, I will be friendly with our friends. Our book says we can do that. But I'm coming off of about 10 days of just weeping. Just 'cause. And my poor husband, Big Daddy, he is not one of us. I always kind of cringe when people say, so he's a normie. He married me. Ain't nothing normal about that. That man is either extremely brave or really crazy. And maybe a little of both. But he, when I get in these spots, man, he's afraid to touch nothing. And so he came to get coffee, and I'm just standing there just weeping. He was like, hi, how we doing? And I was like, I'm having some big feelings. I'm just having some big feelings today. He said, I noticed. And, and I do some praying and I do some writing and I go to some meetings and I try not to screw up my sleep and, everything works itself out. But I tell you what, those little visits remind me that I lived months, entire seasons of my life where I cried every single day and where there was no solution. I'm drinking, trying to outrun it. And I'm doing everything I can to not be alone and to not be afraid and to not feel what I'm feeling. And I just got stuck in that, and it felt like it was never, ever, ever going to end. Apparently, taking a depressant when you're depressed is not recommended. Who knew? And then it breaks, and the sun shines again, and I feel completely different than I did 4 days before. And so we're driving back from the Sam's Club, and Big Daddy looks over. I'm weeping again. And he goes, "What's happening?" I'm just so grateful. I'm just so grateful. It's like, okay. No, really, I have so many things in my life I never thought I'd have. I have a husband and a dog and a house that's ours. And, it's like, I know. Bless him. He just don't know what to do with me. But I'm really extremely grateful tonight. And I don't know what's going to happen. So buckle up, Buttercup. I usually start with, I was born at a very early age on November 16th of 1966. My birthday is 111666 for you Revelations fans. And that's a Bible Belt thing. Anyway, I was born to a football coach and an English teacher. My parents were not drinkers, although I think they could have benefited. My dad didn't drink at all. He had one beer in his entire life. He was in a hospital and was prescribed by a doctor, and I don't really know the whole story behind that. My mother used to have a glass of wine every 2 years, whether she needed it or not. And then around the time she turned 50, she admitted she didn't really like wine. It had been the peer pressure. So she quit cold turkey. And so I do not come from a long line of nothing. It turns out there is some alcoholism further up and further out in the tree, but they were Southern Baptists, so they didn't talk about it. If they talked about it, they talked about how Marthella saved him. And I was probably 10 years sober before I found out that Marthella took him to the AA meeting and sat in the parking lot while he went inside the church. That's how Marthella saved him, but nobody talks about that part. So I walked around thinking I was a carrier for a long time. So I grew up in this family of teetotalers. My parents were both teachers, and they both were churchgoers. I like to say that my parents were from a mixed marriage. My dad was Methodist, my mom was Baptist. And I grew up happy and healthy and wanted and loved. And that kind of annoys some of my friends. And I was just this weird, twitchy kid. Right before I turned 3, they ruined everything. They brought home a bouncing baby resentment. And I blamed her for everything that I did from there on out, because she ruined everything. My first drug of choice was attention, and she got in the way of my attention, and I wanted her sent back to wherever the heck it was she came from, a feeling that can resurface at any given Thanksgiving. And my little sister ruined any opportunity that I might have to blame my alcoholism on my upbringing, because she turned out real different. And she went to high school and graduated. She went to college and graduated in 4 years. I'm 57 and I'm a sophomore. Yeah, I'm real proud of that. I've been a sophomore for decades, and it took decades to get to sophomore, if I'm really honest. After my sister graduated from college, she chose a career. She went to go work for Jesus in Bulgaria. My little sister was a missionary. Isn't that precious? I was a cocktail waitress in a pool hall. So we were both doing God's work in our own way with the poor and the downtrodden. She was giving them Jesus comic books, and I was bringing them home with me. And my little sister, when she lived in Bulgaria, she met a Bulgarian man. They met, they dated, they got married, and they had sex in that order, because in that order is very important in my family. And then she had 3 little girls, just boom, 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 because they're breeders. And Big Daddy and I married about, 13, 14 years ago, and I was not a virgin. So one of these things just doesn't belong here. And for anybody who's new, for a long time I sat in AA and I thought we told this part of the story to explain why we're alcoholic. And that's not really it. I truly believe that baby Jennifer could have been born into any family, anywhere. And if I had found some fermented fruit juice, you would have an alcoholic. And if I did not find any fermented fruit juice, I would have to go to one of the other 42 12-step programs that I qualify for. Because I just came out of the chute, restless, irritable, and discontent, with big feelings and lots of thinking, But that's not what makes me alcoholic. What makes me alcoholic is what happens when I drink. It is covered in masterly detail in the big book Alcoholics Anonymous, and I always recommend you read it with someone. I read it by myself, and I missed some real important things. And so I really recommend that you sit down with somebody and go line by line and talk about what it says, because until I understood the phenomenon of craving, I thought I chose to get drunk, and I thought I chose to get sober, and that's really not my experience. My experience is I got desperate, and I was willing to do what you do, and God entered into my life in a profound way. So, I'm growing up in this town, in the mean streets of Plano, Texas. If you've never been to Plano, Texas, there are no mean streets. There are lots of nail salons and Starbuckses. And it's a place where oh my God, it's hot in here. I don't know. I'm glad y'all heard my talk, because I'm a menopausal. And so when I just melt into a big puddle, so one of y'all can jump up here and fill in. And there are parts I really want to hear you tell. Okay, so I'm growing up in this town, and I'm suffering from this condition for which there is almost no cure. I'm boy crazy. And my problem is I scare the fish. I wanted me a boyfriend real bad. But they knew about me. And I'm a big feeler, and I'm a big sharer, and who knew? It's not a huge turn on. And so I'm wandering through this town, and I'm looking for a boy to marry, at 14. And because I just know if I can get one on lockdown, I'll be okay. And here's to the girls who think a man is a plan. And so I'm looking for a boyfriend, and I'm not finding him. And then he moves to town, and he shows up at the First Methodist Church, and he had a lot going for him. He had an accent, which I thought was real sexy. He was from Mississippi. And y'all ever heard it? It's a nice accent. It's real sappy. And whiny sounding. I like it a lot. And anyway, and he was real cute. I wanted what he had, and I was willing to go to almost any lengths to get it. He was tan. He was toned. He had great hair. He was a blonde. He had a waist. I have always wanted a waist. I would have a different story if I had had a waist. I'm just saying. I did some damage without one, but I can only imagine if I had had one. And he found me fascinating too, and we began to date. And before I ever had a drink, I had Alkalogic. And I grew up in that First Methodist Church, and I liked church. I didn't have scary God. I had Methodist God. Methodist God is really easy to get along with. And so I thought, I liked church so much, I thought I'd be a minister. Plot twist. And, because, attention and potlucks and figure-flattering robes. And, but I meet this guy, and we start to date, and I start doing what, 15, 16-year-old girls do. I got to get this boy on lockdown. And I decided that if I'm going to spend the rest of my life talking about sin, I should totally try some. And I decided he's going to be my introduction to sin. Now, I don't tell him about this, because have y'all ever noticed you tell a guy a plan, he starts revising the plan a little bit? I'm not really open to suggestions on this plan. I've already come up with the plan. You're going to deflower me, and then we have to get married. It's in the rules. Nobody knows these rules. I made up these rules. Who knew? But anyway, I knew this was all going to work out because we hated the same people and we were disillusioned by the same things, and we liked to shoplift. So we had a foundation for a beautiful Bonnie and Clyde style relationship. And So we went on this little date, and I was driving because I'm a helper like that. And we done a little light shoplifting at the mall, and then we were headed off to this romantic bistro, Chili's, and that's when I enacted my plan. I found a very romantic, secluded parking lot. And there was some super mood music going on, like some Lionel Richie or REO Speedwagon. And that's when I prepared to make my big move. Now, I didn't really have a big move. I'm pretty sure it involved like a tongue and an ear. And then we were just going to hope Mother Nature kicked in. But I didn't really get that far, because just as I was planning my move, that's when he popped right out of the closet. Okay, tell your neighbors he's gay, like super duper gay. Not. That makes me very nervous. What is that, a supporting leg or something? Okay, cool. Dang. I need to know this stage is sturdy, because I am. Anyway, regroup. So anyway, he's gay, and I'm mad at him, and I'm mad at God, and I'm getting drunk at them both. Now, my friends started drinking in middle school, and I was not interested in middle school drinking. I wasn't interested in middle school boys, especially drunk middle school boys, because I thought I could take advantage of them. But I wasn't drinking, because I don't know if y'all remember middle school drinking, but it involves nose puking and being grounded forever. And so I didn't want any of that, but I started running around with an older crowd, and I watched them drink, and it didn't involve nose puking or being grounded forever, and now I'm interested in drinking, because these were nerds, and they drank, and they got a personality. When they drank, they could suddenly flirt and tell dirty jokes. And now I want to know all about the drinking. And children, once upon a time, there was no internet. If you needed information, you had to talk to your stupid friends. And so I go on this information gathering tour trying to find out all the ins and outs about drinking and to shut me up, because apparently I could be a bit relentless. This friend of mine gave me 2 bottles of wine left over from a party. I don't understand the concept of 2 bottles of wine left over from a party. Must not have been a very good party. And I can tell you for a fact it was not very good wine. It was a bottle of Boone's Farm. I don't know if there is good wine, if I'm really honest, but I know this was bad. Had a bottle of Boone's Farm Tickle Pink and a bottle of Real Sangria. Yeah, your middle school wines. And I put it in the back of my dad's Cutlass Supreme, and I drove around with it for about a month. Yeah, in the Texas heat, y'all. I want you to just imagine wine that has never seen a grape just being heated and rolled around. By the time we drank it, it had taken on what I can only describe as a meaty quality. It was somewhere between a liquid and a gummy bear, you know? So the first night I got drunk was the night before, was the night before a church trip. Me and Susie were spending the night at Yolanda's house, and Yolanda was fighting with her boyfriend on the phone back when phones were on walls. Susie and I are having no fun, and that's when I remember the 2 bottles of wine in the back of my dad's car, and I ask her if she wants to get drunk, and she does. Now, Susie was a teeny tiny drill teamy girl. I love that I'm in a place where I do not have to explain teeny tiny drill teamy girls. Yay! Okay, so... And Susie is still my friend today, by the way, and she still looks like a teeny tiny Jill Teamy girl who is menopausal. It's just not fair. Anyway, so she's got this magical hair and a teeny tiny waist and humongous pom-poms, and she can do the splits for no reason. And I don't know if you can tell, but I've had to do a lot of writing about girls like Susie. Because girls like Susie say, I'm cold, not in this room, but in other rooms. They say, I'm cold, and suddenly people are leaping over furniture to change the thermostat and grab blankets. Jennifer, chop some wood, Susie's cold. And I'm that chick out in the parking lot just changing her own tire. I'm just bitter. It's not till I'm sober in Alcoholics Anonymous doing an inventory that I find out that the reason I'm changing my own tire is that I'm so sure that no one would help that I never ask them. I'm so sure that no one would open the door that I never wait. I'm so sure that no one will ask me out that I literally do not hear them when they do. And I'm creating my own reality with my beliefs, but I don't know that yet. Now, I'm not saying that girls like Susie don't get a little extra, because I think they do. But the story that I told myself about her was not true. And yet, I found myself truly thinking she was one of the sweetest women I've ever met in my entire life, and, hating her guts a little bit. And so I decided that I wanted to be better than Susie at something. I look at life as one big competition, and it only works if you never tell people we're competing. Just newcomers, I want you to remember that. If they're stuffing envelopes, don't tell them it's a race. You just cram as many envelopes, because these people have no attention span. You can win, I promise. And so I decided I'm going to beat Susie at drinking. And I did. I'm just saying, I did. We started out a closet drinker. We sat on the floor of the closet and we drank. And something happened to me that didn't happen to Susie. She is still my friend today. And if you ask Susie what happened that night, she would talk about blood and vomit and urine. Just a lot of DNA. And I'm not saying that stuff didn't happen, but why would you focus in on that part? Because for me, we laughed, we talked, we wet our pants, and we puked. It was the most magical night of my entire life. I had arrived, because Susie didn't know a lot of things that I knew. She didn't know that when we started drinking, that I thought she was up here and I was down here. She didn't know that when we finished that first bottle of wine, I felt like we were neck and neck. And she didn't know that when I drank that second bottle of wine, it felt like I could take her at anything, including doing the splits. And if drinking made you feel like it made me feel, you'd drink too. And that's where my drinking story begins. But that's certainly not where it ends. And I'm going to fast forward because I spend way too much time on that story. But, I start out this nice little church girl who wants to be a minister. I start out being somebody who's going to look at colleges because she's being offered scholarships and is considered a leader. And I wind up somebody who has flunked out of school really phenomenally quickly, because I started drinking right out of the chute as soon as I could. I started drinking at college, and it just became impossible for me to show up for class. I made my big geographic when I flunked out of school. I went over a bridge in a lake, and it's a whole new world. I don't move to California. I'm not brave. You can go 30 minutes from my mama's house in any direction, and that's where I'm running to, because somehow I intuitively knew I was going to need bailing out. But I moved to a new town, and I think it's going to be totally different there. And the only thing that's different there is I put on cowboy boots and got me a belt buckle the size of my head and some jeans with no pockets on the butt. Who thought that was a good idea? And I became a honky-tonk angel, which was super duper fun. The problem was that by day, I was a preschool teacher, which is a great job except for all them kids. I am hungover every day of my life, and I got 18 4-year-olds right here going, Miss Jennifer, Miss Jennifer, Miss Jennifer, Miss Jennifer. Miss Jennifer is detoxing. We are going to need to be quiet. We're going to eat the paste each other. I don't really care. Just give me a little time, childrens. And that's funny now, but it wasn't funny then. I've never had the privilege of having children, and I knew that it was a big deal that I got to spend so much time with these precious babies. I really did love them, and it was a job that I adored. But alcoholism is stronger than my desire to do the right thing. And while I am working at that daycare center, I say yes to substances that I have said no to many, many times. And I hate telling this part of my story. It's not that I'm an alcoholic and anything. I'm an alcoholic and an alcoholic. But I did use other substances in an effort to control and enjoy my drinking. And I had said no to this so many times. When I had that hippie boyfriend, it was just piles of it laying around, and I said no. And then one night I'm at this party, and somebody offers it to me, and I say no, just like I had done before. And she said, this will make you last as long as the party. And I said, get out of my way. Why did nobody mention this? And it was game on. And she did not mention it would make me last 3 days longer than the party. I thought I had found the solution. Now I can drink bionically, But gradually things get worse because I'm a quick preschool teacher, and people start noticing that, like a lot. And so right before I'd get fired, I'd quit the daycare and I'd go work in a bar, and I'd work in that pool hall. And the problem with that was that there was no limits to my drinking, and I would scare myself, and I'd go back to the daycare, and they'd get all rigid about wanting me there every day, fully dressed and ready to function, and that would get too complicated. And so I'm bouncing in between these two jobs, and I start getting DWIs because that's a hobby of mine. You get drunk and you got to go see some people, And the first time I got a DWI, I thought, that's just what happens to party girls. It's like patches in the Girl Scouts. You just get your DWI patch. I could do a full hour on patches. If you've ever gone to bed with somebody and woke up and he got fewer limbs than you remember him having the night before, you get your prosthesis patch. If you've ever taken a guy home from the bar and had to put his bicycle in the back of your car, you get your transportation patch. Anyway, y'all, we got a speaker in the morning. I got to keep it moving. So, So I get that DWI, and I just think it's a fluke. I just think it's something that happens to a party girl. I get me an attorney who works out of his garage, and that too is a true story. I wish wasn't. And I started explaining the big misunderstanding with that DWI, and he said, Jennifer, when they pull you over again, here's what I want you to do. And I thought that was so weird. When they pull you over again, I already got my patch. I don't need two. And less than 6 months later, I got another one, and I find out I don't just have an attorney, I got a psychic. Because he had predicted this was going to happen. And I don't even understand how it happened. I'm going to talk to Robin after the meeting because I had a solid plan. My solid plan was I was going to be more careful. For you newcomers, I know it sounds like a solid plan, but see, I drink the no care juice. And then I try to be more careful. And I'm constitutionally incapable. Oh, no. So I get that second DWI, and that's when I discover I have a problem. I got a driving problem. And I set out to solve my driving problem. And this sounds insane to people who do not have our illness, who do not have our alkalogic. But this, once again, alcoholics go, there's a solid plan right there. So I move next door to my bar of choice, and I think, problem solved. Now I can stagger home at the end of the night. This is going to work out just great because I don't know what I've got. I don't know that I have a progressive and fatal illness. And I don't know that it's killing me as we speak. And I don't know that wherever I go, there I am, and I'm bringing alcoholism with me. There are men and no men, and jobs and no jobs, and utilities and no utilities. I didn't lose some of the stuff other people lost while drinking because I forget to get it. When I pick up a drink, I have a primary purpose. It is to get drunk. And I'm down to clown after that. But first, we got to get drunk. And anything that comes between me and the next drink is disposable. Anything. Any relationship, any moral value, any religious yearning that I have had in my life, it's all disposable. I will lie, cheat, and steal, and I'll do it from people who don't want to believe I'll do it. I don't steal from strangers. They will throw you in jail. I am not good at jail. My weapon of choice is projectile weeping, and The homegirls see right through that. I'm just saying, I cannot hang. And so I steal from the daycare ladies, and I steal from my best friends, and I steal from my boyfriends. That's what I do. I steal from my family. And gradually things get worse. I like to say that I wasn't promiscuous. I just slept with a lot of people. And I kind of mean that. I'd probably brag about it if it had been lust. But it wasn't. It was a little more transactional than that. And I didn't understand any of this stuff in real time. I think it's really important to be clear that there was no soundtrack in my head going, duh, like, this is a pivotal decision, think about it. No. What's going on in my head is, you know, I'm just wandering into stuff. And, but sober, I went through the book with a sponsor, and when it talked about these are the methods we tried, this was one of the things that came up, was I went home with strangers so that I could continue to drink. And my sponsor said, why didn't you drink at home? I said, I didn't have it at home. She said, why didn't you have it at home? Because I'm pretty thrifty. This makes no sense. And what came out was that when I was 19 years old, one of my best friends from high school went to a party. He got drunk, and he passed out on his back, and he asphyxiated on his own vomit, and he died. And I went to his funeral, and it was tragic. And I sat in that funeral and thought, I would have been offended if anybody called me an alcoholic, but I knew that could happen to me. And so I had to come up with a solution, and my solution was that I won't drink at home and I won't drink alone. Sometimes my solutions are worse than my problems, because that means I'm going home with strangers. And I know the ladies know what happens when you go home with strangers. I'm turning my will and my life over to the care of anybody who is taken. And things happen when you do that. And it puts some dirty on you that soap doesn't wash off. And it was a big deal the first time it happened, and a pretty big deal the second time it happened. And by the third time it happened, I just changed the story I told myself. And I decided that it would be given, and no one would ever take it from me ever again. And gradually things got worse. I don't like telling that part of the story, but I think it's important to tell the truth about where alcoholism takes us. I went from being a nice little church girl to somebody who traded her body for 3 beers, and yet I would have been offended if you called me a prostitute. I'm so thankful to the women who were honest about themselves so that I can be honest about myself. Because if I hadn't gotten real clear on my character or lack thereof, you would have a different speaker tonight. So I got engaged 7 times but never married because I'm not really a closer. I can get them to ask, but we kept doing the divorces before the weddings. And when I say I got engaged, I don't necessarily mean they went to Jared. You know, I don't require that kind of attention to detail. I just know that I really believed that if somebody would love me enough, I could stop doing the way that I was living the way that I was living, or maybe dying the way that I was dying. I really believed if I could have a little baby, that then I wouldn't do what I had been doing. And I don't know why I thought that was going to be this magic thing, because I drank with girls who brought the baby carrier and sat it on a pool table, you know. But I had it in my head that things would have been different. That last guy that I got engaged to, he had some real potential. He grew up in an alcoholic home. He had been beaten. He was a redheaded stepchild, literally. So he had some training, you know. He was looking for a higher power, and I was looking to be one. And we could throw down. I only describe him as an alcoholic because that's how he's described himself. And we had some time. And our home became very violent and abusive, verbally and physically abusive. And I wish I could tell you about how he hit me. But that's not the truth. The truth was that I would wake him up. I would start a fight, and I would not stop until I could convince him to raise a hand to me. I'd kick him out, And then I'd go chase him around the block because he was supposed to beg to stay. And when he didn't follow my script, I'd have him go back inside. He was willing to go to any lengths not to fight with me. And yet I told myself that victim's story. And he went into the Navy to get away from me, and I forgot what a jerk he was, and he forgot what a jerk I was, and we fought ship to shore, and we tried to plan a wedding. The problem was he kept getting thrown in the brig, and I kept forgetting to be faithful. And you fellas, without supervision, you'll just forget and marry somebody else. I cannot tell you how many times, drunk or sober, that has happened to me. And then I was left with me. I moved back home after that wedding got called off, and I brought alcoholism to live with Tom and Charlotte for a year. And these nice people who go to work and go to church and tithe and pay their taxes and try to live by spiritual principles, are living with a daughter that's stealing from them and lying to them and coming in at 3 and 4 o'clock in the morning and going through their stuff and pawning their jewelry, and they're watching me die. And I'm holding them hostage by their fear, because our parents think we're safer under their roof than out on the streets. And what I'm really doing is I'm dragging them down with me. On November 19th of 1992, a miracle happened. I got pulled over on a felony DWI. The miracle was not that I got pulled over. That had become pretty normal. The miracle was that I told the truth. And I will promise you I did not intend to. The cop walked up to the car. Every person in this room, my Al-Anonic friends included, know the correct answer to how much is it that you have had to drink this evening. Exactly. I know this. And what comes flying out of my mouth is $67 worth. And just because I don't want you to think I'm a weenie, this was 1992 and we were not drinking $12 cocktails. And that cop looked at me and blinked, and I said, hey, you know I'm drunk and I know I'm drunk, so how about we do the pen thing and you just take me to jail? And he thought that was a great idea. I was his most agreeable customer that night, and I sat in a jail cell and I had a moment of clarity, and my moment of clarity was that I could no longer say, what's a nice girl like me doing in a place like this? Because it wasn't a surprise. The moment of clarity was now that the curtain was pulled back, and I could no longer look at my circumstances in life and say, well, here's why I did this time. I drink because it's how I know how to get through the day. And if they let me out, I'll do it again. Whether I want to or not, whether it's a good idea or not, I will drink if I have the opportunity to drink, and nobody can stop me. And man, that feels empowering, the first thought. And then you sit with it. Nobody can stop me if I want to drink. I'm without defense. No human power. And I said a prayer and I asked God for help, and I made a decision to go to Alcoholics Anonymous. And then they let me out. And when they let me out, I made a terrible mistake. I did not run straight to you. I started trying to clean up the mess before anybody found out. Because by then I had been made the assistant director of the daycare, and they noticed when I didn't open the daycare that morning. I do not remember what kind of lie I told about why I wasn't there, but it didn't ring true. I wound up getting demoted and transferred, and I got to go back to the garage attorney, and I'm living with my parents. So every attorney in Dallas is sending mail to mom and dad's house, which is noticeable. And every day I'm trying to will myself to Alcoholics Anonymous because I'm trying not to drink. But man, my brain is eating my face off, and I'm suicidal-ish, and that's not going well. And I'm trying to duct tape things together at work. And I'm trying to make sure nobody at home finds out what's going on. And I can't make myself walk through the doors of AA. I'm driving around the group and around the group and around the group. I'm sitting in nearby parking lots. I'm practicing saying, my name is Jennifer. And I'm an alcoholic. but I can't seem to get all the way in, and I can't seem to sit all the way down. Y'all, I got there one night at meeting time. I almost had to go. But then my alka logic kicked in and said, you can't go rolling into AA without a big book. I didn't know it was a big book, without an AA book. So I left the place where the AA books live to go on a 3-day quest to find an AA book. And first place I went was Barnes & Noble. They got them there, but they are expensive. I bet that thing was $6. What am I, Melania? I mean, there's no way. And so then I go to the half-price books, and the problem with the half-price books is the willy-nilly highlighting. First 27 pages of that book is all jacked up. Rest of the book is clean as a whistle, but that first 27 pages, and that's how my head's out to kill me, y'all. I can't buy a used book because some loser is going to influence my opinions about Alcoholics Anonymous with the willy-nilly highlighting. And then I finally get a book worthy of my study, and I'm reading it by myself. And that's going well, because I'm suicidal-ish, and I haven't had a drink, and I don't have a solution. And I'm reading this book that says, this is the great news. Where's the great news? I'm not seeing any great news in this thing. And that's when I got drunk. I didn't mean to. It was an accident. I just went to a bar to talk to a criminal about my legal trouble. And it's too long a story, but anyway, I went to go see Jimmy the criminal because he wasn't in jail over his 7 DWIs, and I was going to jail over my 3. And it felt like here was a man with a real answer. And so I walk in that bar, and I turn down a drink, and I talk to this drunk, and he says, I can afford to be the kind of drunk I am, but you can't afford to be the kind of drunk you are. It was offensive. And because I can't pass college algebra, but 8 DWIs, it's more than 3 DWIs. And I could have kicked that dude right in the baby maker. But there was something inside that said, who would know better than Jimmy? He knows how you drink, and he knows how you think, and he knows how you feel. Jimmy knows. The other thing that happened was at some point there were drinks in front of me. At some point I drank them. And I didn't decide to drink. I decided not to. There was no thought whatsoever. When the drink was set down, I drank it, and I didn't even realize I had done it until maybe minutes, maybe an hour later. I don't know. I didn't black out. I just didn't decide to drink. I drank anyway. And I drank against my will. And if there is not something between me and a bright idea, I will drink tonight. It is very important that we understand that no amount of willpower will keep me from picking up a drink. I must have a power greater than myself. And I don't say that lightly, because I am someone who has been guilty of turning my will and my life over to the care of a better version of me and not God as I understand him. And it's gotten me into some trouble. I have skated on grace many times. And I finally got desperate that night because I knew I'd drink whether I wanted to or not, and I knew what the consequences were, and the consequences didn't keep me sober. And so I walked into a little group called the Plano group of Alcoholics Anonymous, and it was in this cruddy little greenhouse. It was the place where furniture goes to die. Y'all got some of those when Meemaw says, get rid of that couch, they take it up to the Plano group. And that's the kind of group I was at. And I went to a late meeting that night. They turned out the lights and they lit the candles, and I knew I was in a cult. But it did not matter because I had nowhere else to go. I sat where the newcomer loves to sit, which is as close to the door as humanly possible. I make it sound like the room was this big. It felt this big. It was not. It was a tiny little room, and there was a little circle of maybe 10 people. And I was sitting at the back of the room near the door. And right before the meeting started, somebody said, hey, why don't you come sit down here with us? And I truly believe my recovery began when I got up from that chair that I chose and I joined the circle of Alcoholics Anonymous, because I haven't had a drink since. You see, together we can walk through things that we can never get through alone. And when I joined the circle of Alcoholics Anonymous, I've been able to get through whatever life throws at me. Not particularly gracefully. But we don't necessarily get graded on our grace. And I sat down in that circle and you guys began to share, and I didn't know what the heck you were talking about. I didn't come from treatment. I didn't go through any AA orientation. I've been reading the book by myself. It's not going well, y'all. And y'all are talking about the 4 horsemen and the 3 legacies and the big book picnic, and I don't know what any of that stuff is. And the longer you talk, the scarier I got, because people had been telling me for a long time this was the place that was going to save my life. And I didn't even know if I belonged. And thank goodness about halfway through the meeting, a man named Gene began to share, and Gene was wearing bib overalls, a fun fact that nobody cares about but me, and I'm going to tell about it till I die. Gene was wearing bib overalls because bib overalls are special to me. I believe when we go to heaven, they're going to give us our wings and a kolache from a real Czechoslovakian, and we're going to get our overalls and our wings, and we're going to do some arts and crafts. We're going to eat barbecue, and we're going to sing. I've been thinking a lot about heaven. It's going to be a super fun place, and so the fact that the messenger was wearing overalls made a difference to me, because God will use what He's got to work with. And he had a long beard and a camo fishing cap, and he was not a member of the Mensa. But Gene knew how to talk to a newcomer in a way that a newcomer can understand. And he didn't say, and what he said was, I didn't know I was an alcoholic. I just thought I was thirsty. It was the first freaking thing I understood in the whole meeting. And it would have been profound if he had stopped there. But what he said was, my problem is the more I drink, the thirstier I get. And it begins with the very first drink. And from that day to this, that's the most elegant way I've ever heard the phenomenon of craving described. The more I drink, the thirstier I get. It begins with the very first drink. So the whole ball game for a drunk like me is, how do you not take the first drink? And he went on to explain how. Told me that he got a spiritual advisor called a sponsor. He said that sponsor taught him how to apply these 12 principles to his life. He said somewhere along the way, he developed a relationship with a higher power. He got to choose the concept for his higher power. It wasn't assigned to him. He got to seek the kind of power that he needed. He chose to call his power God. He said, but you can call it anything you want. The main thing is that we get started and we keep going. And I wondered what that guy had. They asked me if I'd like to share, and I haven't shut up since. It seemed like everybody in that meeting was an ANDA, and I didn't know that I was an ANDA. I really only knew of 2 12-step programs, and I didn't believe I belonged in the other one. I certainly did other substances, but I had a DEA agent who got me clean just by showing up at my apartment. That's just all it took. I mean, I was clean in 24 hours. I didn't need a spiral notebook or a stiff metal chair or a service commitment. Nothing. I was just done. And put on about 100 pounds in 72 hours. It was impressive, really. Oh, my God, I just figured out that's all peanut butter. I'm sorry, fat girl, squirrel. Oh, my God. Sweet Jesus on a moped. I saw 2 cases coming in. I thought that was all of it. Oh, my God. Anyway. Don't show me more. We got to finish. So I thought everybody in the meeting was an ANDA, and I didn't think I was an ANDA, but I wanted to fit in, and I don't want anybody here to ever forget that newcomers think AA is whatever we show them it is. So let's be accurate about this, okay? So when I introduced myself, I said, my name is Jennifer, and I'm an alcoholic and a thief, a whore, and a liar. I did not know that once you said alcoholic, you got the rest of that covered. It is not necessary to be that specific. But I told you a little bit about what I've been dying, how I'd been dying one day at a time, and I told you a little about what I was ashamed of. And I told you the thing that I was most ashamed of was that I knew I could never get or stay sober by myself. And you smiled and nodded. Because you can fool the fans in AA, but you can't fool the players. And that night I was desperate enough to be a player in Alcoholics Anonymous. Gave me a hug and a chip and a packet. Have no idea where that packet goes. Does anybody know where their packet is? I'm sure it went into my crappy car. And then you told me to go to Denny's. I used to say, you asked me to go to Denny's. I now know if you'd asked me to go to Denny's, I would have lied my face off. Oh, look at the time. I mean, I've got the board meeting in the morning. Because newcomers are weird like that. Like, we don't know what you're going to do to us. So don't ask. They told me to go to Denny's, and I went to Denny's because I thought that's where you filled out the paperwork to join Alcoholics Anonymous. And while I did not fill out any paperwork, I do believe I went to AA orientation. Because I learned some stuff that night. I learned that you guys laugh at things that are not funny. You share things you should not share. Especially not in public. And I don't know why they call us anonymous, because you guys got no volume control. And you love saying stuff like, isn't that just like an alcoholic? And I was horrified. But what I saw there is what I see here, a fellowship of friendliness and an understanding that is indescribably wonderful. And do not doubt the power of that, because it was that kindness that sent me home and got me on my knees, talking to a God that I knew had given up on me. Not because he was mad at me, but because he was so disappointed. And I did it anyway because you told me that's what you do. And I went to the first meeting I could get to after work the next day, and a guy came up to me and he set the hook, and because God knows who he was dealing with, it was a cute guy. And he walked up to me and said, hey, is your name Jennifer? And I said, why, what have you heard? And he said, are you Jennifer? And I said, yes. And he said, did you drink today? And I said, no. And he said, welcome to your second day of sobriety. And he set the hook, but he set the hook not because he knew it was my second day of sobriety. 2 days meant nothing to me. The big deal was he learned and remembered my name, and that is service work that anyone can do. I kept coming back because people learned and remembered my name. And I went to meeting after meeting after meeting because I didn't know why. Because you were better than anything on TV. Because you were sharing things that I could never talk to anybody about. Because in each of those meetings, you were spoon-feeding me God. And I just wanted more. But if you come back, you got to do stuff. They will nag you to death. They will nag you to death. I think it was Norm A. who used to say, being in AA is like being kicked to death by a rabbit. And that is certainly my experience. Get a sponsor, get a sponsor. Come to the women's meeting, get a sponsor, get a sponsor. So I got a sponsor because I thought you had to, and I still think you do. And I worked the steps because once you get one of them, they're going to be relentless. And once you got one of them, then you got to work with somebody else. You got these little twitchy liars. And you have them do the stuff that you didn't do. And they don't do it. It's fantastic. And little by slow, one day at a time, I came to believe. A miracle happened. Sitting in cruddy metal chairs in a circle in a little greenhouse. And then I went to my first conference at 6 months sober. And man, y'all scared the snot out of me and I couldn't get enough. And I went to another one, and another one, and another one. And I collected those cassette tapes. Children, I'll tell you about those later on. But I collected those tapes, and they became like prescriptions in my car. You know, I knew who to listen to when I was really sad, and I knew who to listen to when I was struggling with a sponsee, and I knew who to listen to when I thought my mother would never, ever trust me again. And something developed on the inside of me. The fundamental idea of God. And it started getting uncovered. And I started thinking that maybe it was possible for somebody like me to live life one day at a time without hating her own guts. And it didn't happen because I made a decision to love myself. I kind of get a little weird about that whole thing. There are a few things that sort of infiltrate AA that make me twitchy, like toxic or trigger. Air is a trigger, y'all. Come on now. And nobody else is responsible for my discomfort or my recovery. This is a me and God thing. And so I start doing the deal, and I start getting these little weirdos, and my life begins to change from the inside out. And this guy that I knew in high school, this really nice guy, reached out to me on MySpace. And I was happy being single. I made a deal with God that I'd do everything I can to build a life that I fell in love with, and that I wouldn't allow anybody else in my life until I was in love with my life as it stood. And there he was, standing flat-footed, saying, I want to take you to dinner. And he was a good guy. And I was living in Texas, and he was living in Colorado, and he was going to fly to Texas to take me to dinner. I know. I date guys who sleep on race car beds in Oxford houses, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I got 10 years sober, when I'm doing that kind of stuff. And this guy was willing to fly to Texas to take me to dinner, and I was in love with him before he ever showed up. And he courted me. And we had this amazing wedding that AA people threw together for me, and it was fantastic. And my life just got better and bigger. And I got busy, and I got complacent. And I started getting asked to do this kind of stuff. And it's a wonderful thing until your head gets involved, until my head gets involved. And during that time, some things happened. My sponsor and I kind of got sideways. I felt like she had betrayed a trust, and it doesn't really matter what she did, because today I can tell you I think it was a misunderstanding and that she just didn't think. What's more important was that she had been my sponsor for about 16 years, and I never mentioned it to her. I locked it up, and I mushed it down, and I pretended that everything was fine, but I didn't trust my sponsor anymore. And I'm going to meetings, and I'm sponsoring girls that have problems other than alcoholism. They're sort of my specialty. I don't really know what that's all about. But because I don't have anybody that I'm talking to, when those girls kind of go off the rails a little bit, I start thinking it's about me. And when the only thing you ever thought you were good at was Alcoholics Anonymous, and you don't feel good at AA anymore, it's a real scary place to be. And I found myself sitting in front of a bar more than once and just crying, because I knew there wasn't a solution inside, but I wasn't living in the solution outside. And I'm coming to these things, and I'm sitting on the front row with a big ribbon that says speaker. And I'm giving a funny little Friday night talk. The problem is these things don't end on Friday night, and at some point during the weekend, some guy's going to get up here and he's going to go, me and the fellers I sponsor 2 times a year, we go to the lake and we read the preface, the forwards, the doctor's opinion, all the way through AA number 3. And let me tell you what happens. And I'm thinking, wrap it up, Scooter, the ice cream's melting, Just like you are right now, just like you are right this second. And I'm getting real uncomfortable because I'm sitting on that front row with speaker on my ribbon, and I'm not doing what I know I'm supposed to be doing. And I'm getting squirmier and squirmier. And I think I got to do that. I used to do step studies. I used to participate in them, and I haven't done one in a long time. I got to do that. I'm going to think about it. And I think about it till the next conference. And then I do the funny little Friday night talk. And then every Tuesday night, me and the ladies I sponsor, we study the literature of Alcoholics Anonymous. And we are rocketed into the 4th dimension. Blah, 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 blah. And I'm thinking, that's enough. That's enough, Nancy. We got to go. And I do that for 2 years. I think about it. And I'm getting thirstier by the minute. And I still have these sponsees, but I can't hold their feet to the fire because my feet aren't to the fire. And what happens is they're going to meetings, and I'm running in and running out just enough so that people don't think I'm drunk yet. And they call me up and they go, hey, I got a new sponsee. What do I do with them? And I say, do what we did. And they don't remember what we did. Then I tell them what to do. And I get madder and more resentful and madder and more resentful. And in anger and in arrogance, I say, I'm thinking about starting a step study. I was not thinking about starting a step study, but that's what I said I was going to do. And I said it And she said, yay, let's do that. And I said, oh, no, let me work out the logistics and I'll get back to you. But my girls don't listen. And so she went and told 6 other women that I was starting a step study. Go ask her about it. And what I did was I started with the 12 and 12. We met at Starbucks at 7:30 because I wasn't going to dust. And I wrote these 5 little questions, and it was just one step above an AA word search. I mean, it was low and over the plate because I really knew what was going to happen. We were going to show up 1 week, maybe 2. By the 4th week, nobody was going to be there, and then I could be done for good and for all. And what happened was I showed up on that first Monday night, and there were 12 or 15 girls sitting there, and they had brand new 12 and 12s, and they had little highlighters just out of the package. And I started to talk about the first step. And one of the girls raised her hand and said, aren't we going to pray? And I said, yeah, we should probably do that. They took it seriously, and my life changed. That's what happened. They took it seriously, and my life changed. And we got through the 12 and 12, and they wanted to keep going. And I said, I'll do the big book, but when we come to a step, we take it. And we did. And when we got to the 3rd step, I gave them a rubber duck because that's what one of my sponsors had done with me. We would do the 3rd step prayer, and I called her after, and I would say, here's all the problems I'm having in my life. Blah, 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 blah. And she would say, what are you doing? And I would say, I'm trying to get my ducks in a row. And she said, your ducks in a row? And I said, yes, ma'am, I would very much like my ducks in a row. And she said, you don't have any ducks. You just gave your ducks to God in the 3rd step prayer. You don't have any ducks. Next time I saw her, she gave me this one little rubber duck. She said, this is your duck. It's your only duck. And your only job is to take care of that duck. It's your recovery duck. And I want you to take care of that duck like your life depends on it, because it does. And if you will take care of your recovery duck every single day like your life depends on it, all your other ducks will wind up exactly where they're supposed to be, exactly when they're supposed to be there. I know. So I gave those girls a duck, and we said the prayer, and I called a new sponsor, and I got a clean copy of the big book, and I started falling in love with Alcoholics Anonymous again. And that love affair has continued. We've been running that Monday night meeting. We decided to try Zoom 3 months before the world shut down because God knew I needed to warm up. And that little Monday night Zoom meeting, I go to a home group and I have other commitments, but that little Monday night Zoom meeting was my home base. Those were my girls. My husband and I live with my mama, and she's the sweetest woman on earth, and she's really generous, and she's kind, and she's loving, and she gives like Jesus gives. And we were watching her age. I've always said if you need a roommate, get a 76-year-old. They're fun. And she lived upstairs, and we lived downstairs, and it became apparent that upstairs and downstairs was not a good arrangement. And before we could get things changed up, she fell on the stairs. And she was 3 steps from the bottom. It was going to happen no matter what. I mean, it was just, a foot just slipped and her ankle broke. But at that point in her life, she had several things going on. And she just never fully recovered from any of it. And it was such a hard and scary time. Because most of the decisions we make, let's be honest, they're just not life and death. But it felt like during that time we were making life and death decisions. And we weren't particularly qualified. It's a learn on the as you go thing, and it's sad and it's scary. My mother died of cirrhosis of the liver, and she didn't drink. She didn't even get good stories to go with her rotten liver. But my sister and I got to walk her home, and it was hard. And I knew God was all over it, because on the days when I would come home and think, I just can't do this, I can't do it, I would go to my mailbox. And there'd be a card from somebody in Alcoholics Anonymous, either from near or far. And that little card would remind me that I was not alone, that people were praying for me, that we can do hard things, and that God's all over this. And so we walked my mama home.
And I gave the eulogy because I thought it was like giving an AA talk. And it does not. Well, the one I gave was. And then it was time for me to start traveling and talking again, but my husband was going to be at home alone, and he doesn't mourn well, and he loved her as much as I did, maybe more. And so I decided he needed a dog. We're not dog people. I don't even like dogs. But he needed a dog. And so I started looking for a dog for him, because that's how my brain works. And I said, we need to go to the shelter to look at this dog. And he said, to look at a dog. We're just looking at a dog. Yes, we're just going to look at a dog. We're looking at a dog. You promise me we're just looking at we are just looking at a dog. So we're on the way to the shelter, and I say, stop at Pets Plus. And he said, why? And I said, to get a leash. And he said, why do we need a leash? Well, what if we like the dog? Turns out they'll give you a leash, but I didn't know that. And so we went to go see this dog, and there was no chemistry. And then there was this one dog we saw on the way in, and his name was Elroy. And we both stopped and said, that was one cute dog. And then we walked off, and we didn't like the dog that we went to go see, and we were about to leave. But man, those shelter women are relentless. And they came running up. Wait a minute. Now hang on. And every single one of those shelter women said, have you introduced him to Elroy? And so we went and met Elroy with about 20 seconds. I said, I think that's our dog. And my husband said, I think that's our dog. And we took this dog. Well, we didn't take him home. We had to go back to Pets Plus because we didn't have nothing for a dog. And I don't like dogs. I don't. They're like, they do the nose and the crotch thing, which is really weird. And they're needy, and like you have to go home, and they got to go outside, and you can't just leave a bunch of cat food out for the weekend. It's a commitment. And that first morning, I came out, and that little dog came up, and he put his little paws on my chest, and he about beat me half to death with his tail. And it's so dumb, because he broke my heart open. And I love dogs. And here's the stupid thing. As soon as I fell in love with my dog, I fell in love with your dog. It's the dumbest. I'm just that person in the grocery store. Do you have a dog? You want to see a picture of my dog? I want to see a picture of your dog. Service animals come by. I go, I know he's at work, but if he wasn't, I would like to pet that dog. And all of a sudden, all this junk that y'all been saying in AA about, that dog and God and backwards and all of a sudden it starts making sense. And we kept his shelter name Elroy. And my little sister, who's the Jesus freak, said that Elroy comes from Hebrew, and it's El Roi, and it's the God who sees me. And God knew what I needed. And he sent me this little dog, but here's the trick. He sent me this little dog because I got that little dog to help him. You see, the last time that I worked the steps and really got close to God, I didn't do it for me. I was trying to trick a newcomer. Well, she wasn't new. I was trying to trick somebody who was stuck into working the steps without knowing she was working them. So I gave her this assignment, and I had her write about, God, here's why I don't trust you. And I, just to make her, feel comfortable, I said I'd do the writing, but I didn't need to. I was only doing it because she needed to. And so I wrote a page and a half about all the ways in which it's very obvious that I do trust God. And the next 4 pages were about how there are some pretty significant areas in which I'm still in charge. And so then I gave her the next assignment, which was, what should I call you? And I went through a lot of things that I wasn't ready to call God or that didn't sound right to me. But I decided that maybe love sounded good. And I started addressing my prayers to love. And it's amazing how intimate those prayers became. Kind of cut to the chase, because so many of my questions and struggles are about how do I bring love into my situation. Recently, I was writing about my financial situation because I struggle a lot with it. I struggle with it, which doesn't mean we don't have enough. We always have enough. It just doesn't look the way that I want it to look. And I started a little business that I'm in love with, and I have so much fun doing it, and I make $0. And I said, God, I don't even know if I'm being faithful or insane. But I'm going to need you to show me what I'm supposed to do. And the answer that came to me was that I work for the family business. And the family business is loving God's kids. And as long as I'm doing God's work and loving God's kids, I'm going to be just fine. What I'm like today is I'm a sober member of Alcoholics Anonymous. And, I was chasing my dog around. I promise I'm going to finish someday, Lee. And so I was chasing my dog around trying to find out what was in his mouth, because that's what you do when you have a dog. This is like 3/4 of my day. What is in your mouth? What is in your mouth? What is in your mouth? And I'm laughing at him because it's always my stuff. He never chews daddy's stuff. It's always my stuff. And I thought, that's how God watches me. He's like, what is she doing? What is in her mouth? I give her carrots and broccoli, all kinds of beautiful things, and it's always cheese. Look at her with the cheese. More freaking cheese. And I got a high off of that lasted 3 days. I'm God's puppy. I crack him up. He just watches me and just goes, look at her. She's just nuts. Look at this thing. But spiritual ideas will flip on you if you're not real careful. And one day in prayer and meditation, it hit me that, if I'm God's puppy, then God's going to provide for me, going to make sure that I have what I need right when I need it. What's my job? What's my job? My job is to be enthusiastic. My job is to want to go anywhere God's going. Elroy don't say, where are we going? I don't want to go to Kroger. Elroy's like, Kroger? Great! Toenail clipping? I'm in! He does not care where we're going. He just wants to get in the car. That's my job. Am I as excited to sit down for prayer and meditation in the morning as Elroy is when I come home on Sunday and I open that door? Because I ought to be. What happened to me is a miracle. I couldn't go 24 hours without taking a drink. And God not only removed that obsession, but He gave me a life worth living. I have these amazing, beautiful people that I get to share with. I have a mission. I know who I am and what I am and whose I am. And now it's time to bring the joy, because that's what attracts the newcomer like nothing else. I'm glad to be here, and it's a good day to be sober.
Y'all, that was amazing. Thank you, Jennifer, so much. It was so much better in person, and I felt